I was big into boat metaphors back in 2004. Nice. That's a real thing.
Welcome to Champaign is Also a Band podcast. One songwriter, one song. I'm Sven, your host for a journey into the music of Champaign-Urbana. Recorded in the Blue Box studio with a songwriter from the Champaign-Urbana music scene, past or present. Welcome to Champaign is Also a Band podcast. Today, I have a very special guest that I'm very sad to say is going to be traveling and leaving us, but I wanted this episode to be special and that we can talk about the contributions that they've made to the Champaign-Urbana music scene, but also I really, really love this song, so I want to talk about it. So, I guess without further ado, my guest, Isaac Arms.
Hi, Sven.
Hey, thanks for coming out. I really appreciate it. So today, we're going to be talking about your song, Fireflies, off the album Silver Cities, and this is from your band, Withershins. And I want to mention a few bands that you've been in, just for our listeners, for reference. And actually, do you are some of the, like, as far back as we go, are some of these on like Bandcamp or anything where people can find it? Or
yeah, a couple. I think Blanket Arms made its way onto Bandcamp. Spooky Ghosts also. I don't know about Harold Loves Maud. Bike Weather, definitely not.
Okay. And is it the Spooky Ghosts or Spooky Ghosts? Because
I'm not sure if we ever made the decision. It was very in my idiom probably to just call it Spooky Ghosts, but I think the Spooky Ghosts is likely what it officially was.
All right.
If it was officially anything.
Excellent. So you might have heard Isaac Arms in the following bands: Glint, Harold Loves Maud, Bike Weather, Blanket Arms, the Spooky Ghosts, Withershins, which we're going to listen to today, Evil Tense, The Struggle, Thunder Truck, Cloud Manor, Winder, and Spandrels. So, I guess without further ado, let's listen to Fireflies and then we'll just talk about it.
All right.
great. We've listened to the song, and I don't know where to begin in some ways, but I want to note that I absolutely love the meter changes that you do, where it's this, those first two sections, you start with the intro, and it's in 3, and it's very like swaying waltz, and then when you jump into the verse, or just before you jump into the verse, I guess if you want to call it a verse, it smells like summer is over. You're in 4, and it's just this very direct drum beat and guitar work, and I think it's interesting, and this is something that I feel goes across the Withershins. Across Withershins' work is this. The background music will have a certain sense of urgency, but your singing will have a very slow and deliberate delivery that in these 2 sections of It Smells Like Summer Is Over, and then the street lights shine like fireflies aflight. You're taking the time with the words, and you're emoting, and I don't know, I enjoy that so much, and it has to me, I have a certain emotional response to that, because it's just like everything that's going on with life, where you've got so much, time is constantly passing, but the deliberateness of trying to just get the words out that you need to get out before the time is over. Let's see.
Thank you. I'm really excited that you noticed that. That makes me feel about how I could never quite decide if I wanted to have like a shoegaze dream pop band or like an indie rock emo punk band, and so to have some reverb on the vocals, and to have the one thing I just picked up over the years was, these folks are really, their delivery, just how they're singing is what makes it kind of dreamy. So the guitars can get away with being a little chunky if these phrases are drawn out. And I probably from listening to Sigur Rós and Mogwai, just this notion of, well, I'm saying words, yes, but really I'm just playing guitar lines with my voice. Like if I were doing lead lines for what that melody is for Smells Like Summer, I'd probably have an overdrive or a fuzz on, and it would be sustained like that. And so I think I imagined those tones as being instrumental, even though it was in fact me singing.
Okay, yeah. And when you say Sigur Rós, I totally think of this melodic line of drawn out reverby kind of.
Except Jonesy can actually sing.
Oh, you can totally sing.
I got the job done, but I don't think anybody ever. It was fine. I don't think anybody was like, yeah, that cat can sing. Like they really. I think it was the emoting was important to me, but also I knew that was what I had. I had the ability to perform in that way, to write things that meant something to me, and to emote them, and I guess I felt that made up for my shortcomings with terms of pitch control, and it like Aaron Stromberg, my bandmate in Evil Tense. Aaron could talk about a refrigerator not working, and it would be the most beautiful thing. And you could give Aaron the worst clunky lyrical cadence, like the syllables would be inappropriate. And Aaron is such a good singer, he could make that work. I was very meticulous on how I wrote my syllables. Like, I like the balance of the directness of the autumn is falling in, because it gives it that rhythm, and it allows there to be some urgency while the rest of the time I'm taking my time. I think proper singers, I always consider myself a vocalist. I think real singers can do beautiful work with almost whatever they're given, and that wasn't my talent, so I tried to make up for it in any other way that I was able to.
All right. Well, I guess I was going to say agree to disagree, but no, your phrasing is your phrasing. I mean, that's what makes it, I mean, it is what makes you a vocalist in the manner that you are a vocalist, if that makes sense. No, probably not. That's okay. I think it's interesting in that second verse. Is a choice of how you would like me to refer to these sections, or? Oh,
I don't know. I consider it 3 different songs. I consider it a sort of suite. I think I forget what I call. At one point, I had maybe a name for them. Like the second section was Phantom Limbs. The third section was Stardust or Summer Stars. The first part, I don't know what I called it. Maybe, I consider the middle section to be whenever everything clears up, and there's that part we talked about whenever the other guitars sort of fade away and it just goes to my part.
Yeah.
And then it builds, and then we float below. That's the beginning of the second part, and the third part is. Yeah, so I don't know. You can refer to it however you want. It's a mess of a song, but we somehow... Our goal was to put it all together in a way that each part flowed into the next without being unnecessarily jarring. It could jar if it did a good thing, but for somebody to finish that track and to look down and not quite believe that 9 minutes had passed. So call the parts however you want. I'm not sure that we ever had good names for them ourselves.
Okay. Because... I was curious about the choice of the roll. I was curious about the part where it says the road rolls over the bones of my kin. Wow, I almost tripped over those words. A little alliteration there. And if you don't mind me saying that, the kin always hits me as a very Kentucky thing to say. I don't know if that was something that you intended or had.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It was intentional.
Because to me, knowing somewhat that you grew up in Kentucky, and I know that each of us struggles with our own sense of where do we come from and where are we going, and where do we fit within where we came from. And to me, that road rolls over the bones of my kin. A road is somewhere that you go to get away. It's a place that you go to travel from or to, or are you returning? Are you leaving? I guess, I don't know. I would like to kind of hear what you may have meant by using that phrase. I
think I tried to transmit that I was using kin on purpose as a Kentuckian, because I didn't say the road rolls over my bones, the bones of my kin. I said kin. I threw a little bit of that in there. It's almost making fun of myself and putting on a character, because I'm not totally that person. I haven't had a Kentuckian accent since I was a teenager, probably because of the sheer amount of television and movies I took in and my desire to not have that accent even while I was still there. But the line, I'll say this, I've been looking forward to this podcast, and I knew I was doing the podcast, but I forgot that I had specifically mentioned Fireflies as the song we were going to talk about. I independently, of my own volition, not having remembered this, put on Fireflies in my car the other night. I don't really do this often, just put on my old tunes or whatever, but I did it because I knew that I was leaving this place, and that line is a reference to a very specific spot in Champaign-Urbana. Oh. That line is a reference to the cemetery that runs east to west along Kirby Avenue. And the road that I would drive on, probably around the time I moved here, 2006 or so. I moved here in 2005, and by 2006 I was delivering sandwiches and ice cream and pizza and cookies or whatever. And I have no kin buried here, not in that cemetery, not in Illinois, that I know of, but it was just, I thought it was just strange that there was just these college kids playing tennis across the street from these dead bodies, and I was driving, and I was so close to these gravestones and thinking about my dead grandfather and how I had picked up smoking cigarettes and he died of, lung cancer, and all of these things together. And the streetlights shine like fireflies is just because the lamp, the lighting along Kirby is at least on both sides, but it's kind of a boulevard, so there might even be a middle section, but they're just marching in such order, and I was probably speeding, delivering these pizzas. So just this regimented, beautiful, artificial thing happening as I was speeding through the night. It was just a whole lot of, Evil Tense used the phrase, John Iceberg likes the phrase nighttime driving music, and we were a chill nighttime driving music, but for me, I think Withershins largely was this instant nostalgia, but excited and frantic and a little anxious and a little sad and a little angry, intense kind of nighttime driving music. It was more the windows down, you're smoking a cigarette and you're rushing to get the cookies to the place so you can get the tip.
That makes sense with the what the hell happened to them, where you're reflecting on, as you said, like the dead bodies that are just in the middle of all this other activity and kind of a disregard.
The them was both these people, like what happened to them that led them to their demise, like what was their life like, and also the them is the bones, like what happened to like literally physically what happened to them? Did they decompose just like everybody else? Or was it something, I don't know, was there something holy and spiritual that happened where their spirit left their body and their bones are abandoned? I don't know. It was just probably very inebriated kind of brainstorm I had about like what ifs and thinking about my own mortality and putting off properly thinking about my own mortality. I was only 19, 22, something like that.
Oh yeah, that's about that time. Well, and after you do that definitely is where you end that first section, and then you join up. It changes back into the 3, and then we float below the amber glow of phantom limbs akimbo in the acts of ever after riven. I didn't need to say all that, but I was just being clear about which section I'm talking about. This now that you've said that you're not pasting together, but you're putting together in a very good way these 3 sections that, you're definitely telling a story in almost the sense of like a play rather than, you're doing these 3 acts. And I just find it interesting that there's phrases like we float below and then the phantom limbs akimbo, all of these kind of like posturing and movement, and you're still keeping that deliberate, well thought out phrase, but at the same time as the drums going on during this time are very frantic, isn't the right word, but very insistent, I would say.
There's energy being built up. And this is also where it seems like where you've gone from introspection into what's the opposite of outrospection? I don't know. I love making up words, but you end that part with "but I hear you wallowing," and it's like you've reflected upon your own mortality, and now you're kind of reaching out and thinking of those around you. Maybe that's just one of the things that is kind of spoke to me when I was listening to this again. That was really exciting for me to hear you talk about that. I don't know if you've gotten that yet on this podcast, but I have no idea what that section means. I don't know what the hell those lyrics mean. I did a thing with Withershins for the first 2 records where a large part of me listened to my intuition of what the vowel shapes should be. And I found the nearest words that I could construct into rhymes and then backformed something like a narrative or a meaning or something like that. So I don't exactly know. I know that I was seeing somebody at the time who used the phrase wallowing, and I wanted to shout them out in the song. No one speaks because no one listens was an important line to me. That one's probably the biggest line. I mean, there are like 3 hooks in the song. It's what the hell happened to them? No one speaks because no one listens. And let's take this town and shout it out or drown it out.
Drown it, yeah.
So
interesting. Well, it's done really well. And do you even have a little iambic pentameter there?
I mean, back in the day, I did write some plays whenever I was in college for the first time, and I did study Shakespeare around that time at the U of I. No, I wasn't a Shakespeare major anyway. I took 1 course there with my English literature degree. It might have been accidental. I don't think I would have on purpose set that structured for me, but the rhythm may have come naturally to me based on what the guitar part was asking for.
Right. Well, and this is where you're stepping into that.
The amber glow of phantom limbs akimbo in the acts of ever after ribbon. But it ends with that couplet of ribbon together.
Huh. Well, I do want to say that section right there, even if you don't necessarily know what you meant, that is like the most chew-worthy. I mean, like it fills your mouth. Like I mean, to say those words, and I know I've spoken them because I wanted to make sure I said them right. But I even was tripping up over them because they've got, I don't know, they've got even a bounce to them that that I just find really interesting.
We float below the amber glow of phantom limbs akimbo in the acts of ever after ribbon.
There you go.
I don't think I've ever done that before, but it worked.
And then I guess you get to something that the next part where it's the clutch regret, like a letter unsent. I can resonate with that very much so. And I do want to say that the music the music turns, and to me sounds more hopeful. I don't know if it's just which again is that contrast of like things being said versus what's actually coming through musically. I don't think it speeds up, but it feels more bouncy, and that might have just been articulation and playing and moving, transitioning to what the third section. But it's just the ticking pounds ears with weight they cannot take. Just, I don't know.
The third section was a song called Stardust that I wrote in 2004. So it was written before I moved to Champaign-Urbana. It was written before I met any of the members. It was lying around, and I think I had wanted to use it at some point, and it seemed like it was in the same key.
I was just going to say, isn't it?
All of our stuff was in the key of D and F, just about. Just about all of it, or I guess C. I would hang around the F chord when I was in standard, but that doesn't mean it was in F. It was often in C, because I wasn't a big fan of the D minor chord at the time. So it probably was C.
I hate that. Well,
D minor chord on a standard tuned guitar is very, very folky. It's hard to get away from the folk. Yeah. By the time we got to Mount Fuji in Blue, I found a phrasing for D that I was somewhat happy with, but it was still mostly a power chord, so it wasn't really expressive too much in terms of the minor. But anyways, it was probably hopeful. I was getting my ass kicked existentially for like the first time without a net at college, part one. So I was on my own. I didn't have my friend group. I didn't have my family close by. And I was also, finding out about sex, drugs, rock and roll in very quick succession. And I think I wanted things to be okay. And I wasn't trying to say that things were terrible, but I knew I was feeling something, and it hurt, and I was trying to process a lot of those things. I'm not actually thinking about what the words of those songs are. I'm just, that song, that section, I'm just thinking about my life back then. Clutch regret like a letter unsent. The taking pansies of the weight they cannot take. Yeah, I think at that point in my life, I was in a long-distance relationship, so some of that stuff is alluding to those sorts of things. And I did write a lot of letters back then, actual letters. It wasn't really a metaphor. It was a simile. I do use the word like. But whenever I listened to this song leading up to this podcast, and I heard Clutch Regret like a letter unsent, I was like, oh, that's interesting that my regrets at that point in my life were just simply things that I hadn't done. How luxurious. I only regretted those undone things, as opposed to I had yet to do all these things I would thoroughly regret later.
Wow. And that does seem where you like pivot. You use that part to like pivot where you're going back to the third, where you're not going back to, but you're going to the third section, which, even though you say that this is a song that you had, the third section is a song you had written a while back, you're still referring to what seems like the first section where you're talking about the summer and autumn. And I do think it's funny as I'm talking, the things that I had actually maybe interpreted, but hearing more of the story as it goes along, I'm like, well, wait, maybe, no, I don't know.
New shit has come to light.
But yeah, it's like, in some ways I want to say, don't doubt yourself. It doesn't mean that your interpretation was wrong in the first place. It just means that now you have more information. But it's interesting that you were saying that in that Clutch Regret, you were in a long-distance relationship, and then this third section, it does sound like you're... I know that this is probably not what you meant, but the hand-in-hand line is kind of that... I know I've been in a long distance relationship, and it was like sometimes you would look forward to even the most mediocre or simplest of contact. So like hand in hand. And I didn't know at this point if this was, the transition of summer ending. And very interestingly enough, that we're approaching the autumnal equinox, the summer stars fall in the autumn sky, cut through the night, hand in hand. It seems like there's a joining, but also like a separation, or maybe this interpretation of that connection or relationship is changing, or you're fooling yourself, or are you actually building a certain sense of hope at that point, or you're holding on to whatever you can. I can phrase that into a question, maybe. It's
kind of denial. It's hyper romanticism. Hand in hand, run to the setting sun, catch each one, or outshine the dawn. It's just heavy schmaltz. This love is powerful. This love is real. If I speak it, if I treat it with absolute romance, this love will survive because I can protect it with all of these roses. And the pop science metaphor of summer stars fall in the autumn sky was just this reference to the light that we see of stars. That star could actually be dead now because it takes the time lapse to reach us. So it's about memory and us, how things change and our futures are unknown.
That totally made me think of Bright Eyes, and I don't know if you care for Bright Eyes, but where he says the stars that clear have been dead for years. Yeah.
I never knew that line, but that's a better line for the same idea.
Well, it's a different line. But I also find it interesting that section that we just talked about, the summer stars, that is the only part that you repeat and sing.
That is
later.
the Withershins ethos. A chorus was anything that happened twice, and it usually only happened twice. It was very rare there was a chorus that happened 3 times, and usually there was something happening in the arrangement that made it different each time. I was very opposed to choruses because I wasn't strong enough to write a really good one that was worth repeating exactly.
Oh.
Yeah, very few straight-up choruses. Usually, Withershins employed what we called a short chorus, which would be like 2 measures, and then the next time it happened, it would be 4. And then if it happened a third time, it would be some sort of different arrangement or dynamic approach of 4 that made it more intense, or maybe a minor relative or something.
Yeah. I mean, the words are repeated, but you certainly do change it. But the section in between those 2 repeats, if I hope you don't mind that I'm saying choruses. Repeats, but
whatever you want
because
to
it doesn't. It's the words that repeat, not necessarily like exactly the phrasing or the chords behind it. The aftermath, aft collapse.
I was big into boat metaphors back in 2004.
Nice.
That's a real thing.
Huh. So wait, the big into boats was a real thing, or like just the aft collapse?
Boat metaphors in around 2004. I had a song called Dusk Runner about like my car being a pirate ship. It was an actual thing that I was into, those metaphors.
Is that still around? I'm not sure. It's
a Glint song.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah,
I see. Oh, okay. Well, never mind. The she's going down.
That's the ship. She's going down.
Yeah.
Abandoned ship.
Yeah. But then you needed an escape. Let's take this town and drown it out. Again, drown. I see. Boat. But I guess that's the only one that there's just like these very short phrases in there. You're just aftermath, aft collapse. She's going down, aftertaste, and then you just if there's like that if this would be sheet music, it would be like, and it would be broadening would be what they would say, and like, let's take this town and drown it out, where it's just like it kind of sums it back up.
I may or may not have inserted let's take this town and drown it out during the Withershins process of writing this. I can't remember if that was in the original lyrics as part of the song Stardust. I'm not sure. It might have been something even cheesier and stuck in the romantic thing as opposed to bringing it outward and sense of community. I think I was very invested with Withershins being my first rock band properly. Like, I was in a couple of bands, but it were more folky and more acoustic and a little less playing. I had never really played bars too much. So I became invested in this notion of like, what can I say? What can the language be? What can the message be? What can the timbre be? If I'm yelling or screaming, what can I say that will get through and actually shake people and get them to listen? Like, literally on the album before, we had a song called Ariel, in which I take time in 2 verses to sing the word listen. And so let's take this town and drown it out were just some things I wanted to encourage and invite the audience to participate and to listen and to engage in the music, because we were not just there to be the soundtrack to their drinking night.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I guess I'm thinking of this in the recording sense, but certainly I could, especially if they're just sitting there and, they've been kind of not lulled. I would never say anyone gets lulled with Withershins, but I could totally see that people would be just back to their conversations, and then that would definitely snap them out of, like, why is his voice, gotten loud all of a sudden? My goodness, You mentioned Ariel, and The one song, and maybe it's just because it works well with running, is I have Prologue, and I have not gotten that out of my what do I want to say, the last I think back since the time that I started listening to music while I was running. I think I've always had Prologue in that one, just mainly I mean, it's great and it moves, and the some of the snare drum work in there is just like, oh my god. But anyway,
yeah, Colin Larson.
But it does a few of the, like, oh gosh, I'm going to say this wrong, not the paradiddles.
Paradiddles?
Paradiddles, thank you. Yeah, some of the paradiddles that he's doing just on, yeah, where it's just like I have a, like, unspoken, well, now it's spoken, contract with myself that whenever that song comes in, I have to pick up the pace a little bit.
Colin
so it's
would
like,
be thrilled.
Yeah.
Neil would be too. Neil always liked that song. I think a lot of Withershins stuff that was higher tempo, I was really interested in them having a vibe of being in a car and, you know, the fast motion of things going by in your window, or what it looked like in the My Hero video, whenever it was just first person following somebody running around corners, running around street corners, and like the urgency of that and the motion of it. I was very, very into that and trying to achieve these vibes, I guess. I think I had music videos for all of our songs in my head, and Prologue is the first section of Fireflies and Prologue share the same chord phrasings.
Champaign is also a band podcast is proud to support Jubilee Cafe. Jubilee Cafe is a free weekly meal program at Community United Church of Christ, 805 South 6th Street in Champaign, Illinois. Jubilee Cafe serves a home-cooked meal from 5 to 6:30 each Monday. Their mission is to feed hungry people by cooking healthy, delicious meals and by serving their guests restaurant-style with servers waiting on tables. Jubilee Cafe is open to anyone who cares to eat with them. Because food insecurity among students is so high, they serve students as well as others in and around the Champaign-Urbana community who struggle with hunger. Meals are free to all and will be served each Monday evening, located in the accessible lower level of the building at 6th and Daniel Streets in Champaign. For more information on the meal or how to volunteer, go to the Jubilee Cafe CUCC Facebook page or email them at jubilee.cafe@community-ucc.org. That's jubilee.cafe@community-ucc.org. Why don't we just real quick? Let me just ask, since you're taking off, I just wanted to ask what's your favorite thing about Champaign-Urbana, the music scene? I mean. Is that too? Yeah.
No, it's a great question. My favorite thing about the music scene is, by and large, everybody is very interested in making the best music that they can make on almost every level. That was very inspirational to me. And I don't think that has changed. A lot of things have changed within the past 5 years, and then even in the last year. But the thing that has stayed the same, I think, is folks trying to... There's so many different ways to make good music and what that means, good music. But I've seen people focus on technical aspects, focus on gear, focus on really prioritizing a quality studio experience, folks really excelling at promotion. Just from all angles, people are really putting in effort because they care about what they do and how they do it. And, you know, I think I don't go out as much. I had to stop going out a while ago, like I was anyway. And so I can't speak to it anymore, but I feel like by and large, was talking to somebody about the David Byrne book, How Music Works. And he talks about a short list of things required to make a music scene, a healthy, successful music scene. And one of them is musicians get in for free. He talks about a venue that is not prohibitively expensive to put on shows, which was Mike and Molly's for us, and that musicians get in for free, which I don't think has ever really been totally true. And while we were talking about that book, I was like, if that were true in Champaign-Urbana, no shows would ever make money, because 70% of any rock show crowd is other rock musicians. And so to have that support and interest has always been really inspirational to me.
Gosh, I want to pick your brain all about Heirship Records and how that began. Can I first ask, where did the name come from?
Well, the Final Fantasy game series has always been one of my favorites. And so I think, I don't know which part of it came first. It's a pun. The logo is like an 8-bit video game airship. I don't know which part came first. I don't know when or how it occurred to me, but I always associate the name with Andrew Kling. I remember coming down from a show at the Velvet Elvis in 2011. And we were walking across whatever that short strip of a street is. It's like Park Street or something, like where the city building is. I think I want to call it Park Street because I would always park there. But I remember we were talking about just this idea, and I remember he like turned around and was doing that thing where you kind of have a skip to your gait, and he was walking backwards and he was smiling. He was like, Heirship Records, Heirship Records, kind of squinting his eyes and smiling, saying like, I like that. But it was just this notion of my generation of rock musicians had inherited a very robust infrastructure for local music. There were venues, there were promoters, even before Facebook, there was just a lot of different ways to get the word out and to be supported and to experiment and to establish. And it was I just had this feeling of, well, it's our turn to take care of it. What are we going to cultivate and pass on? So we inherited this music scene. How are we going to improve it for the next generation?
Wow. My goodness. Yeah. So, and then what inspired you? Was it beyond just what made you have the desire to have a record label and I mean, maybe that you'll reiterate some of the things that you just said, but because certainly being able to cultivate the next generation of local musicians, certainly, but
this is making me a little sad. I could just not say this, but I'm thinking about it and I may as well. My plan had been to pass off the label for it to continue. But I never really met the person who reminded me of a younger me doing that sort of thing. And that's okay. There are people who have moved us along and are doing things better. Like, I'm glad that I'm no longer a centerpiece. There are people doing great things, but none of them communicated to me that they had the interest. Like, what I was doing wasn't really working, so it wouldn't even make sense to pass on to somebody else. They would absolutely, like, the new thing would be figure out something absolutely new. But why would I start a label? What made me want to? If that's the original question, I would say, firstly, it's important to know that this is my second record label.
Okay.
I ran a label called Pop Monster Records out of my various attic apartments from about 2006 to 2007, roughly. Had a lot of releases in that short amount of time. This was when MySpace was absolutely,
yeah.
What's the word? Fertile.
Right.
It was this. It seems so simple, but you could search for music by location, by genre. It was a utterly robust network of connecting musicians and scenes and stuff. So, and also I was big into DIY punk stuff before people were really having these conversations about DIY like they are now. I mean, I've largely held that ethos, but also I don't own a record press.
Right.
So I don't do everything myself, and I do send off. I don't do it anymore. I did send off, files to be burned to CDs by another company to make. Pop Monster was a hands-on project. I burned CDRs all night, stayed up with my own, computer and handmade packaging and limited edition everything. And it was small but lovely. And I folded for at least two reasons, but one of them being I started attracting artists that I felt I couldn't support because they were too good. They deserved better. And I just didn't have the capacity to do the quality or quantity that they deserved, in my opinion. So Heirship started because I have an interest in an ability to do all these things like promotion, graphic design, copywriting, a lot of it was the design work that I've done. I mean, for any Heirship Records artist, I have variously been their manager, booker, agent sort of person, their designer. I've made merch. I've designed album sleeves. I've done PR. I've played in the band. Not only of course I released Evil Tense and Withershins and those were my bands. No, I mean Terminus Victor had me on stage. Total Asshole had me on stage. Whenever some of these performers needed some support, I produced the Moats record. I was in the studio producing the Euriah record. I played a guitar part on that. I played some piano on Moats. I just wanted to be involved. The point was, I saw all this amazing local music, and one of my biggest inspirations was Parasol.
Yeah.
I love that Polyvinyl is here. Polyvinyl is not a local record label. They're a locally based record label. Parasol was putting out New Ruins, Common Loon, You and Yorn. There was so much going on with Parasol, just absolutely floored me, and I bought pretty much everything they had put out. Tractor Kings, there's so much good stuff going on, and they were my ideal. And I was lucky enough to intern with them in 2011, and that's whenever I started Heirship, so there's no coincidence there. But what I saw was, I didn't think anybody needed me. I thought it could be an advantage if somebody would handle. I noticed that in 2008, 2009, whenever Withershins was starting up, you had to be a web designer, a graphic designer, social media. You had to do all these things. And a couple of bands, and one of the proudest relationships I developed was with the Chemicals. I'm glad that Parasol put out our Landmark record, because Parasol, I think, is a real record label. Heirship Records was a goofy name for this Isaac Arms kid who was running around trying to help. For those listening, our Landmark, find them on Bandcamp. They are comprised of most of the final members of the Chemicals, as it were. The Chemicals were a band for 10 or so years in Champaign-Urbana, absolute stalwarts, and it was a crowning achievement of Heirship Records to put out 2 Chemicals records and reissue their first record to just get it online so more people could hear it, hopefully. My impetus, the hope for me was, some of these people are musicians, and that's what they're good at. That's what they should do. So my hope was that I could help facilitate a whole lot so that these people could show up and make music. And that was their concern, and that was where they put their efforts. I thought maybe this music could be better if they were able to fill their heads with the music. If their hands were in the guitars and their minds were on the lyrics or whatever, and the song was in their hearts, and that's what they were doing, and everything else I would try to help take care of for them so that they could be this band with these songs making these albums, as opposed to, yes, go out and mingle and be social and whatnot, but like all of this tedium and chores, like if I'm doing it for one band, I have a system, it wasn't systematic per se, but there are greased channels here. I've done it here, and I know how to customize it for your brand and your style and your voice. I mean, Terminus Victor never had a Facebook page. Chemicals never had a Facebook page, and I was friends with all these people, so I knew who they were and how they interacted. I knew how to post for them so that it felt like true to the ideal of what was going on. But it was still like people weren't going, what the heck? I didn't know T-Vic was playing. I was trying to functionally get it out there so that this band that is almost too good for us doesn't have nobody showing up because they just don't know. Which is not to blame Terminus Victor, but honestly, they should be busy being Terminus Victor.
Right.
And everybody should do, it's not to say none of these bands could have done, they could do whatever they want. These are very smart, capable, talented people. It's just this notion of, why don't you do your good work and let me... let me do the heavy lifting on the things that seem not terribly musical. And I love doing design work. I love it. It was a great joy to be a part of that, to help bring those visions to reality.
So did you have a favorite poster that you did?
Oh God.
No. Loaded question? Or
no, not a loaded question.
No,
just so many. There's so many. I mean, most of them are Withershins posters because I did almost every single Withershins poster, but I did make plenty for other bands. I kind of liked I made a Uriah poster kind of by hand a couple years ago that I really liked. I hope I saved the original. I made it with like t-shirt iron-on felt letters and a cutting of the Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past manga that was included in the Nintendo Powers in the 90s, and some label, like red maroon label maker tape for the text. Like, wow. I was very into collage and scanning stuff in and adding anything digital later if necessary.
That was, I'm kind of picturing that. I remember to some extent, and it probably would be somewhere along in their history, wouldn't it? On Facebook, maybe.
Yeah. I think my favorite part of that poster was I may or may not have included some like a brown grocery bag, a paper grocery bag, and somewhere in that design, I had it on the scanner, and I just put a penny in there. Somewhere in that poster, there's just a penny in the scanner. No reason. It was just probably around. I was closing the scanner hood and I saw a penny. I said, "Nuh-uh, you come here, little buddy." Just stuck it in there.
In your mind, Heirship Records is completely linked with the Champaign-Urbana music scene, and as such, you can't take it with you, or
for those listening at home that didn't know anything about my label before, Champaign-Urbana music inspired and filled the available slots of the label. That was an awkward way to say that. I will say, for those of you listening at home who didn't already know, Heirship Records is exclusively a Champaign-Urbana record label. The point of it was to document these years of the music scene, to give a snapshot of what was happening. And Jeff Merritt of Parasol said that to me the other day. He said, yeah, it was a pretty good cross-section of what that decade was like. And that was the nicest thing I could have ever heard. The right thing said from the right person to make me feel like I didn't just waste all my time and money and effort.
It's an eclectic mix of everything that's gone on in the Champaign-Urbana music scene. Even, I think back on, some of the Record Store Day Crashing the Heirship record or releases that you did. Those, you would start at one end of if you listened to it all the way through, you would start at one end of the spectrum, go 20 miles out, turn around and come back, and it would be, you'd end up in the same place to a certain extent, but you would definitely have a different vibe. And those were some of my favorite releases that Heirship did, and if I remember correctly, it was if you weren't giving those away, those were pretty cheap, if I remember correctly, and I feel like that when you say it as kind of as an archive, or I forgot the term you just used, but you kept something, you created something, you materialized, you amalgamated something that, or what, I don't know if that's the right word, please forgive me, but you solidified something that would normally have just been a bunch of free radicals in a certain way. You would have had these elements of these different facets of Champaign-Urbana, and to see some of these collections, you brought together this little ball of fun, that has all these different parts, these all the colors of the sprinkles. So I want to personally thank you for just being able to enjoy to a certain extent the fruits of your labor. And it was a labor of love, and I don't think anybody could ever dispute that. And I really hope that as you travel to a new area, that you find and can be the zookeeper, so to speak, of the things out in Madison, and those magical things that happen out in Madison in their music scene. I know they have a different music scene, but I feel like if anyone is a good person to send out there to find what are the gems to put on the crown, I think you're. Anyway, I'm very excited for your new adventures and things that you're going to be able to see. And
Thank you, Sven.
We will certainly miss you greatly.
Thank you very much.
But we know you're going to come back and visit.
It's only 4 hours.
Champaign is Also a Band podcast is proud to support Exile on Main Street. Exile on Main Street, located in the old train station building at 100 North Chestnut Street in downtown Champaign, has been helping to build record collections since 2004. Carrying a wide array of new and used LPs, CDs, and video games. Exile on Main Street has something for just about any music enthusiast and old-school gaming devotee. Exile also hosts regular free live music shows on its stage, so be sure to check out their Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages for the up-to-date details on the next upcoming event. Open 7 days a week, they can be reached by phone at 217-398-MAIN. That's 217-398-6246. What's your favorite non-musical thing in the world? The thing that fills your soul that's not musical, but is just a joy to you?
The greatest thing in my life that is not music is this belief for me that I can live a different life that I used to in a better way, and every day is an opportunity to think about and care for others and to figure that out and to forgive myself as I go along so that I'm not stuck in myself, and to see the best in others and try to bring out the best in others, because that's the way to find the best in me.
Wow. It's hard to end such a great conversation, and I have thoroughly enjoyed hearing you talk about your music, the Champaign-Urbana music scene, Heirship Records, and what that means to you, and what it's meant to us in some ways to be able to let you hear, at least from a fan, should I say, and also, hopefully, I would say, a friend. I'm really glad to have you in my life, and as you say that you want to better yourself by being helpful and being in people's lives and sharing who you are, it's been amazing to be the recipient of your kindness. And I can't wait to see you again. So have a safe journey, and find all the great talent and share that with the rest of the world and let it expand. So Isaac, thank you for being on the show and chatting with me.
Thanks for having me, Sven. Thank you for listening to Champaign is Also a Band podcast. This is Isaac Arms reminding you, great music is out there. Go find it where you live. Forgotten the first notes of Withershins you ever hear. The beginning of the first track of our first album is Kneel. It's just bass.
Yeah.
It's a part that I wrote that goes like that. So it's key of A, but this F sharp minor 7 chord that I figured out, because the open A is the minor third of it. So Fireflies is to the D, to the A, and then Prologue is a A, and then have the F sharp to the D.
You almost have an NPR voice, it's so good. Studio South Beaker.